I'll keep this simple today and just straightforward and made more for the end user because it's kind of a holiday weekend and I don't want to bore you guys with that. So, let's see here. I'm going to get into this thing.
What holiday is it?
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day tomorrow.
That's not.
Oh, yeah,
It's a
whatever.
Hallmark.
I was going to say Hallmark. That's not a holiday.
Holiday implies you get Monday off on Mother's Day. Then it'll be a real holiday.
Thank you, Mom. Yeah, they made a
Thank you, Dad.
Anti-mom crowd here.
So yeah, Proxmox VE, it's actually a really awesome, it's probably one of the most awesome distros in Linux I have ever touched. And it's built on Debian 64 from an Austrian company, and they kind of like remixed OpenVZ and KVM right in on top of it, as long as you have a chip, Intel VT or AMD. I think V chip, you could actually run both KVM and OpenVZ or container CT type virtualization. And you know what really turned me on to it is when I found it, I was like, wow, this is like so easy. You know, anybody can put this thing together. And at first, I ended up blowing this machine all the way down right to the metal, and I tried to do it on a Debian build, but there was some issues with the Debian 64 packages. With the network, or at least I was having issues with the network and video, so I wasn't able to actually make it a full virtualization. I was going to bring this thing in, install the Proxmox VE ISO, and then add the GNOME desktop management right on top, and I did that, but I had this issue I couldn't overcome. So anyways, I just went ahead and just blew the machine right back out, put Ubuntu on it, and then I had to load VirtualBox on it, and that's basically where I'm running these two Proxmox VEs today, right on top of VirtualBox. I mean, I don't recommend you ever do this for your home stuff. Really, the ideal place to do this on is like if you can get a hold of a HP ProLiant, you know, dual Xeon quad core. I've been eyeing a couple, and they're about $400 to about $5,000, depending on which one you're looking at, because it's got all the RAID and everything in it. Or you can just use some regular old machines, which I recommend you use. I mean, this stuff is. This platform is very friendly on hardware, and that's why I'm just going to run this on a i3 Dell with, I think it's got 6 gigs of RAM on it or 4, and just run it right on top of VirtualBox. So anyways, I guess we'll go ahead and just jump in, and I'm going to show you how this thing works. I've went ahead and set it up for you, just in case something goes wrong. We have the live setup already ready to go. I guess the first thing we'll do is go ahead and install this. Is there anything you guys want to ask before I start? Install, yeah.
Is it open source, free?
Yeah, it's open source. I mean, they do have support for you can pay for it, and I think their product, it's called like what is the name of the company? GHMB or something like that. They're based in Austria. They offer support for the Proxmox, their version of it. And then I think their big thing is their mail server and their proxy server, their own supported platform for the Proxmox environment. I think that's their thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to walk you through a live install of a Proxmox. It only takes about 3 minutes for this thing to install, so it's pretty amazing. I've already got it all set up here, and we'll just fire it up.
For idiots like me, what makes Proxmox so hot? Or am I anticipating something else?
Well, I think that what's really cool about Proxmox is the fact that just about anybody that can burn a CD, download an ISO, it's about 370 megabytes, and burn it onto an ISO, and put it in. It's so friendly, it's so easy, because once you set this thing up, you can run file servers, mail server, you know, any kind of, like, it does have a few limitations on application servers, but you can basically build a miniature data center in your house. Is the goal, is where I'm moving at with this. So my ideal environment is to have 2 ProLine, you know, dual Xeon quad core servers, plus have 1 more instead of 3 NAS, and then add that to the back of this server. So I haven't gotten that far yet, but that's what I'm trying to move towards for as far as storage and things like that. So it really is very flexible as far as playing with. But I'm just going to show you this thing, and you'll see 3 minutes to install this. That's all it takes. 3 minutes. Just Accept the license, here it is. Country, it's USA. There it is. We'll pick New York as our time. Pick the password. That's it. Let's call this the master. That's masternode.localhost.com. And I set these at 80 because I know when they are on the network. Here's your network settings. That's it. So once you get this thing installed, you would actually install you would download templates. And these templates are already pre-created versions of your favorite Linux distro. And some of them are done on Ubuntu, Scientific Linux. You see them do, the big one is CentOS. And you see all these different templates, and then what will happen in the community, people will build other templates on top of those basic Linux distros for Drupal, WordPress, Sugar CRM, vTiger CRM. I mean, just the list keeps going on and on and on. Yes.
So what you've done here is you have an OS, and then you've loaded VirtualBox, so you can run an operating system on top of your base OS.
Yes.
In VirtualBox, you've loaded Proxmox VE, which is similar to a host virtualization environment. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you have 3 levels, and at that 3rd level, which is Proxmox VE, that is typically what you'd put on physical hardware.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We would put that,
And that is just the host that you're going to install guests upon, although these aren't really guests, they're more like containers, but that's a separate discussion, correct?
Yes. 'Cause,
Okay.
Yeah, the idea was I couldn't do the demo without bringing a big server in, so it was just easier for me to do it on the VirtualBox. I'm basically cheating the demo. The VirtualBoxes are essentially supposed to be thought of as real full-blown physical hardware servers.
Right.
Yes.
Is your Ubuntu a server or a desktop?
It's a server, but you can install the GNOME and then do the forwarding and all that, and then basically go in under what do you call that, VNC or one of those types of clients, depending on how you have it set up. But this is more of a
You can
server.
do it either way.
Yeah, I've got both. Just curious.
So, let's see here. Let's go ahead and show you guys some templates while we're waiting. It's almost 95% done. Pretty fast considering that, 3 or 4 minutes, you pretty much have a full-blown small business or home data center in your house. Now, I've seen on the internet people run something similar to this, where it's this one or OpenVZ or one of these platforms, because I can tell by just looking at their pricing plans and all that they're running some type of container-based technology like this, because there's no way that you can offer like a virtual private server. For example, GoDaddy and places like that will use the supported version of container-based virtualization, which is by Virtuoso or Parallels Incorporated. But the OpenVZ is their open source version, and what Proxmox uses those packages plus the KVM stuff, and they pull it all together for you. It's pretty cool. So it's done. We'll reboot this thing. Pretty simple, right? For the most part.
Is container-based virtualization different from, say, just VirtualBox?
Well, and I think from when I read this a while back, VirtualBox in theory I think is a container, or it's like supposed to be like its own virtualization thing as well. But in theory, if we just look at it on the surface, the container virtualization, or CT, it's kind of like emulates a real machine. Like you log into it, feels and looks like a real machine. Unlike VirtualBox or some of the other stuff, you're actually, depending on how the kernel may be manipulated by VirtualBox, it's using their resources. The idea is that you're basically on your own versus like KVM where it tends to be a little more heavy and it's starting to use more of the hardware. Container virtualization, it gives you more room to expand. So you had the hardware resources, enough RAM and enough desk space. I mean, we could probably just launch like 100 containers and have everyone log into them and do other stuff like one table could build mail servers, one table could build directory servers, the next table could build some other type of storage or file server, and the other table could do web servers. Yes.
So since this is a container type, the idea is when I update the host OS, everything in every container is automatically updated. So update it once and everybody sees it?
Well, it depends on what distribution you're using with Proxmox, but there is a thing that they were talking about in the support files about that. There's a command that you have to run in order to update your containers that are in there. It really depends on which one. So there are some bugs in it, but for the most part, once it's up and running and you have the server pretty much locked down, you're pretty good to go for a while. So let's log into this thing now that it's up.
It really is running other kernels, though. It's not just it.
It kind of just emulates its own self. It's almost like it's that's a kind of a tough. I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was wondering, there are like two ways of seeing it, maybe misunderstanding, but like on one hand, pure virtualization, it's actually loading a guest kernel. As far as the guest is concerned, there's no difference between that and hardware. And then another way, I don't know if anybody does this, would be like to have, you don't load a Red Hat kernel. You just totally impersonate the entire operating system API Red Hat using your own kernel, and then you can run all the Red Hat software. Yeah.
So I can take a stab at that. There's if you think of virtualization, the goal is to have some discrete instance of something. So the way of doing that, KVM, for example, I've heard that tossed around today. That is a very heavyweight example of presenting hardware-assisted virtualization to a guest. So to your point, unmodified guest, the guest thinks it has real hardware for the most part, that kind of stuff. There's para-virtualization like Zen, which is operating system assisted virtualization. So if your operating system is compatible, the hypervisor can help it along. Sorry?
Your guest operating.
Forgive me, you're right. So if the guest is Linux under Zen, Linux, or other free software operating systems, then you can have Zen help it along. What we're talking about today, containers. Containers are essentially, much lighter, to Dan's point, very lightweight instances. And if you run lightweight instances, you don't necessarily have to run the host kernel. One of the ways we can check here is if you log into an instance, you do a uname-a, is it similar or the same as the host kernel? The term container can be, containers generally lightweight, but it can mean a lot of other things, and there's lots of ways. Just being a container does not necessarily mean that you're running, a very lightweight instance. There's all kinds of caveats.
This is not necessarily run the host kernel.
Correct. So there's, container can be, kind of like a chroot or a jail or a little bit more than that, but my understanding, and I can be corrected here, my understanding is that Solaris Zones, for example, could technically be construed as a container, but there are some caveats that it's not necessarily just a glorified jail.
I went ahead and pulled a kernel for you, Dave.
So is that...
It's different.
So, yeah. But long story short, virtualization it's becoming so generic, it's I think it's getting tougher and tougher to pin down exactly like what's a container, what's para-virtualization, what is, hardware-assisted full virtualization.
But I think like cells captured mitochondria a long time ago. They were independent cell, and then over time, mitochondria got whittled down to where they can't even exist outside of the host cell. And I'm wondering if, like, the future of a lot of these guest operating systems, eventually some of them will exist only as guest operating systems, which have absolutely no internal workings. They're just a mask that the host puts on.
Well, you have to look at the pros and cons between these methods, right? When you have independent guests, you can have one guest in one version doing X, and you can have another guest doing Y, and they don't share anything, so if something happens in one, the other one is undamaged.
Yeah.
Once you start sharing, not only do you have a security issue, but how do you do upgrades? If I'm running 20 different VMs on the same host because I've got a lot of memory and CPU, and I need to do a security patch, now I have to upgrade all 20 instead of just one, where the problem. So it's not just a matter of, you know, what you like, and there's also, of course, parallel utilization performs a lot better. You load a lot less. You also have a less memory overhead. You're not loading the same code over and over and over again in each VM. So it has a performance boost initially, but maintenance, that's where you're paying the penalty. So which one wins? And in some cases, one is better than another. You can't just say one is the best.
Well, so one thing I'll point to, and I do not speak from experience, but my understanding of Solaris zones is that there is functionality within Solaris zones that will allow you to do things like administer zones as a whole, and so you don't necessarily have to upgrade 100 zones. You can do things in a root zone concept that will, for lack of a better word, propagate or be shared among other zones.
So the word they use for that is global. You have a global zone, and then you divide that machine into multiple containers, right? And the idea being is you're really running one kernel, and
You guys here?
the other containers in the Solaris world, and I don't know how, like, similar to the FreeBSD jails, but I don't really know how those work. For example, when my zone or my container comes up, my container, whatever you want to call it, my top parent process is called zsched rather than initd, right? So the main guy comes up and then loads up the zscheds, which are read it's an XML file basically. It's just a zone markup, and load those containers to what you're saying is you just update the main system, and the only way you can really tell that you're in a container is by finding that zsched process or by using ARP. Who uses that? You know, I mean, not most users. So, you know, that other than that, you're completely blind to the fact that you're in a container.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So here, I went ahead and saved you guys a lot of time by just go ahead and building two machines. And then here you see a cluster, or excuse me, you see the master and the node. I've already added them. But it's a very simple process. Once you add, support's pretty good, so once you build these machines, you can keep adding these to the master node. And I've already added the templates, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and we're going to build a couple container destros. So let's see what we have here. Let me just go through the machine first. So you log into this panel, and you get this screen. And basically, is your dashboard. It tells you, what the IP address of the machine is, the role, master, active, uptime, memory disk, and so forth. When you install this on a real server, this data is going to be more accurate based on your machine. So the VirtualBox kind of like tailors it down. I'm sorry.
Do the two nodes share storage, or do they have separate storage?
Well, I don't have storage set up on this because I didn't want to crash the box. But you can build storage, and I'm going to show you. I'll show you where you can add.
Just
all
as
that.
disks, so I was just wondering if it's the same disk they're looking at. Or...
Yeah, I made a mistake by trying to do all that, and it tanks. So, in each virtual machine, which you're not seeing, is I've only allocated 1 gig for each virtual machine to do this demonstration. So when you start building these containers, you only have, your limit is maybe one, no more than 2 containers at 512 megabytes or 500 megabytes or whatever. So let's see here. Virtual machines. Let's jump in here. Oh, did I show you this? Let's see. No, that's not it. So these are some machines that I've already built, but we're going to go ahead and build another one. Or actually, I could do the demo. Yeah, it's fine. We'll do it on this one. Maybe I might crash the box, so just bear with me. I'll have to launch another one.
So actually, do you mind going back to creating?
Yeah.
I saw a drop-down box that said OpenVZ
Yep.
container. Does it offer you other types?
When you install this fresh on this box, it does have the KVM because this chip in here will support it. So here it tells you that you can't do it because you don't have the support.
Right.
But when you do this drop down, you will get the KVM. So if you want to run like Windows 2008 or server and things like that, it will do it. I've done it on the other machines.
So it sounds like it's agnostic. It doesn't have to be container based like OpenVZ.
No.
You can it doesn't care as much about the hypervisor. Cool.
Yeah, that's right. And let's go ahead and build us a box. So we're going to go ahead and build us a template. I've already added these in. Let's pick one that's simple. WordPress. 512 megabytes is fine. We're going to set a password, something simple that we can remember.
Is that the real host name, or is that just the name of the VM?
It's made up. I mean, if you were going to do it front facing and open up the firewall and all that stuff and have your reverse proxy, you could do all that. And maybe this might be good for a lot of the people that may want to get involved with the tux.org project that Greg was just talking about. Is that the project he was just talking about, right? About the server administration side. If, you know, you get a hold of some of these older machines that you're not using, that are not too power hungry, you can deploy some of these containers and open up to their side of the internet, especially if you're on FiOS or something like that. I mean, unless you're banging the server to death, Verizon's not going to harass you that much. I mean, I keep my servers on the internet. I haven't said anything to me yet. So let's go ahead and build this machine. We'll just set it at 4 gigs, it's fine. And here you have a choice. We're just going to use the virtual network settings. So we're going to give it an IP address. Let's see, let's just do like 95. DNS, okay, that's fine. Press the button, and there it is. And actually the advantage of having the reason why I launched this one for you is because we can actually do a live migration. This machine is a little underpowered for like real robust stuff, but I just wanted to kind of show you some of the advanced features. If you wanted to migrate something, you would just migrate this container we just built to the second server.
So you just rebuild an instance on the fly?
Yes, very similar. Very similar. The containers are already pre-built, and you can pre-build them too, and then snapshot them out and just have them. You know, you set it for your environment, and then you can just go all day long with containers. As long as you have enough resources, you can keep firing them up.
So you don't need shared storage to do a live migration?
Well, it's probably good to have it, but you don't. You should probably set the box up with the storage, but you don't need it to do it here. I'm going to do it right here for you right now. I'm going to show it to you.
So we'll work without shared storage.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's good if you can have the resources to build the machine completely out.
So some hypervisors will actually let you migrate without shared storage. So apparently VirtualBox is something called, I think, warping, where during a migration, so to speak, you're sending the backing store at the same time. So there's, I think in most, most virtualization situations you are sharing storage, but that's a technicality at this point, or it's becoming a technicality.
So I went ahead and started up the container that we just built, and here's the IP address for it. And actually, I don't have Java installed on this machine, but you have a console right here if you wanted to launch it automatically. I'll just log directly into it if I need to. So we'll just come here like this. There we are, the WordPress template that we're using. I'll show you the appliance again. It's right here.
So what it appears is this is a front end to a virtualization technology, and this front end can front end to 2 different technologies, OpenVZ or KVM.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then depending on which one you're using, you have templates already built, which are similar to Amazon AMIs, right? Or Kickstart files or whatever, right? That will get everything, so without touching anything, someone's approved this, and it just fires it up, easy for you to build.
So I'm not an OpenVZ expert, but the templates might be required for OpenVZ versus KVM, which is like a full
Yep.
hardware emulation, or not emulation, but virtualization environment you could use ISOs. That's
How big are the templates?
That's what I guess.
They're anywhere between like 100 and some megabytes up to about 300, I think, depending on what your build is. Now, I've read up that on some of the newer distros, that some of the newer kernels of Linux are having problems working. And and I haven't had a chance to test it, but that's what I've read up. But they said some of the newer kernels are having problems with the OpenVC container model.
The kernel, when you start messing with the 3.0 kernel, there's some interesting things that are going to happen, I've learned.
So OpenVZ is out of tree, and there's some stuff that needs to be added.
So it's not upstream yet.
So the big problem, I think OpenVZ and LXC or Linux containers require the same thing. You need discrete PIDs in a container, process IDs. You need discrete UIDs in containers, and that stuff currently lives out of tree.
So that's the difference. So you're saying when you do a container, you have unique PIDs per container, right?
Exactly. Like though it depends on the container. In a chroot, you don't obviously, and you can do a lot with a chroot. But for those particular technologies, OpenVZ and LX, or at least Linux containers, especially true that the stuff to make those things unique is out of tree.
Okay.
But
It's curious because the Solaris way you have your PID is unique to the global, not to the actual container. So
How does that work?
So I can sit on the global, right, and it's a System 5 PS, but they added the TAC Z options, TAC uppercase Z, and that'll drop your PS list for the entire machine, right? It's unique to the global, and then it'll tell you what zone that particular PID is related to. But you don't have like a PID 1 in each single container, right? You have your Zsched usually ends up somewhere in the 800s, and then you build from there. But it's unique to the machine, not to the container.
Gotcha.
But if I go into the individual zones, do I then see the real PID, or do I see a simulated?
You won't. If you're in the individual zone, you won't see the PIDs that are associated with the other machines, and you can't use that TAC-Z option.
But am I isolated, so I don't have a PID 1?
You don't have a PID 1, no.
Okay, so I'm seeing the real PID, I'm just seeing my PIDs and not all the other ones.
Right. Yeah, you see all your PIDs, but those PIDs are not specific to your zone.
Right.
So you could have, if you have like an 8,000 in your container, there will be no other 8,000 in any of the other containers.
So
right?
how does it deal with resources like number of kernel resources normally generated, like the number of ports you can assign and all that stuff? Is that globally managed, or is that per zone?
No, it's global.
So if I have 10 different zones defined, I still have the same limitation of how many combined of all those machines, how many sessions or how many TCP sessions I can have open.
I believe that, yeah, but I believe
That actually depends on how you're doing the IP sharing.
Okay.
Oh, you can make some magic there?
IP share or Solaris.
Okay. I mean, that's to me a big difference between virtualization and parallelization. Is you have either a global thing, and it basically you have one machine that does everything, and that's what you're managing, or you're managing a set of logical other machines, but they all are individually configured and have their own individual limits, just like your normal physical box would have.
Yeah, a lot of what Solaris does is basically every process structure, every user structure has an associated zone.
Right.
It's just that for the global zone, that zone ID is 0.
So I'm gonna migrate these slots for you guys. Show you. It's actually running right now, and kind of cool. You can basically fire these things right up on the fly. You can fire Drupal up and just keep going all day long and log into the router before forwarding, and set it right out on the internet, or build a SSH server out there for all your friends to connect to, and as soon as you get the data you want, push it over to your storage, and then just delete the container and go build another one. That way, in case someone were to hack the container, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Just destroy it and build another one. So I'll just show you how this thing works here. Just going to do a live migration. We'll do it online. You'll see. We'll just push it to the other cluster. Ooh, I'm going to name it. Let's see. It's here. Maybe running out of resources.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, totally. What to move.
I'm getting this glare back from the screen. So, there we go. There's the status. And here's some other stuff I didn't show you guys. I'm going to move into the storage what Peter was asking, and the logs and some of the other features that it has. it's still in the process of migrating. Let's look at the logs. Probably give you a little bit of error because this is not really the way you should set this up on VirtualBox. But here's all your log files. You can do it by service.
So any machine on your network now could see that WordPress thing?
Yeah, yeah. Any machine on your network, or I could open up. What you don't see is I have a router under here that where I can kind of emulate my own network. So if I turn the wireless radio on, you guys can connect to these containers that I put up. So storage, I think that's what. Here's the system's network settings. DNS. We set this up in the beginning. You guys can change the admin password and user if you needed to. Set up a proxy server address if you were using that. If you had like a squid or something like that, some type of inside your network. Or you could probably run it on this and just run it back through, but you're going to need some serious resources. Storage, here we go. Well, here's your storage options. If you already have these environments set up in your network, you can pretty much add iSCSI, network file share, LVM groups, or add a directory. I haven't got a chance to set this up yet because I'm running out of hardware, and time. So the next time I come to the meeting, I'll try to do at least one and show you.
But I've noticed you don't do that by host. You're doing that globally.
So say that again.
You added 2 nodes to your cluster, right?
I added one. Actually, I have one master cluster, and then another slave node that I add to the master.
But you're only looking at one definition of storage. You're not looking at the storage from one node and another node, so they always have to match. I mean, I'm not sure, when you look at your local there, where's it located? That's sort of my question.
The local, which one are you?
The only one you have.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's just referring to this, but in theory, you're supposed to actually add some storage places if you were going to do like backups if you schedule.
But it doesn't show what node it's running.
That's correct, yeah. I think if you do storage, depending on if you're, no, I don't think they would do that actually, but I haven't set it up yet. I'm going to try that because the thing is in order for it to show the node, I think what you're doing is, I think the theory behind this is if you already had iSCSI running in your network, another server like it was completely independent of the whole Proxmox thing, and you were going to like do basically a big, massive backup to it.
But that means that all nodes have to share the same IDs. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, I might have an NFS that is mounted in one location on one box, on another location on another box.
That's a good question. I don't know that answer.
But it's it's pointing to the same back-end system.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to. Anyone else may know that answer possibly? I may have to pull my Tony.
Click on if you don't mind. Click on iSCSI target. See if it asks you for So it's basically asking you for a target.
But it's not asking it by host, right?
Well,
so this is normal for.
Depends your definition of target. Can you try a NFS? If it asks you for an IP address in NFS, then it's implying shared storage somewhere else.
Right, it's somewhere else, but you have 2 nodes.
Right.
So how do you where do you mount that NFS on each node?
Oh, I think okay. You would do it to the master. You would do it to the master node because technically, what I didn't show you, there's actually two boxes running here. So you have this IP address of 8.1, and the master is 8.0. The IP address. But once you add the node to the cluster basically, the master takes over everything. So you would add it to the master node.
So the answer basically is that node 1 mirrors what happens on master.
The node 1 mirror, yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay. Well,
because
that's the answer.
Control, and you can break off the cluster, or break off the node and add more nodes if you wanted to.
So,
but you would add like maybe 10 or however many nodes you have to the master, and the master controls it. And you would shoot all your backups and snapshots and everything. In case you had an issue with the main server, you can basically just build a new one and pull everything back in. So here's some more storage. Okay, we'll put the storage, add directory. if you had a storage setup, you'd have a backup schedule you could create, but we can't create a backup job because we have no storage. And like, here's the server services that are running. We can restart them here on the fly. These two services here will not run if you don't have, if you haven't defined the master cluster. Actually, I should probably build a master cluster and show it. I can show you guys. It's pretty simple. But let me see. Let's see where we are actually. This might give you a little bit more understanding of how this thing works. Let me show it to you. So this is the terminal version of this. But if you wanted to add this as the master, you would just say C. Actually, let's just do it like this because it's make it easy. And if you wanted to add the host, it would be that command dash, I think it's A-H, and then the IP address with the master node. Let's see that one works. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and fire up another, I'll fire up the CRM, I'll shut this one down. I want to kind of show you guys some of these templates. Here's a bunch of appliances that are, you can, if I had internet access, we could download them, but right here is, I guess it's cached. So this kind of gives you kind of a little snapshot of what you can download from their sources already. And there's their certified appliances, their mail server, and their, essentially it's a proxy server, secure web server.
So how do you update these once you have instantiated them? How do you manage them? If I need to, let's say you have your WordPress site and I need to apply an update, do I do that just like I would with any other machine?
Yes.
Or do I do that through template system?
No, you would actually just log into the box, the shell, and just do it from right there. You just, if you're on CentOS via Yelp, run some package or Aptitude or apt-get, just right on the container itself. It's the trick is when you actually have to update the actual Proxmox. That's the one where it gets sticky. That can get a little sticky because then you have to update the templates too. There's your services. Go ahead and build another machine and I'll let you guys ask some questions or cut it loose and you can go buy a bunch of gifts. The way you don't get thrown out. For the mothers out there. Yeah, here Mom, here's the Proxmox. I got my mom the iPhone. She was like, what is this thing? I like it, but I don't know what this is. I don't know anything about phones. I've never used a phone like this, but she loves it. But someone on the list asked about what phone, I think it was Beartooth, asked about phones the other day, actually. Yeah, Verizon's very expensive. Yes. So these containers I've already built. So I'm just going to fire this up. And this is our CRM. So I guess getting back to what he was saying, where would you use something like this? I mean, really, if you were small, this is how I would present this if I were going to use this, if I was a small business person. First thing I would do is I would go out and figure out what it is you want to do and gather the market research before you build a company. And then go to the Virginia website, file an LLC for $100, and get yourself a SIP trunk from a provider for about $30 a month and ask for about 10 numbers because you don't know how you may scale your business operations. So you're going to need about 10 VIDs. So you got your PBX ready to go, you got your LLC ready to go, then you get one of these servers, you're ready to go. So you can front face these, build all your templates and push them out and basically be your own cloud service if you were to work with other people. Maybe you might hire a stay-home mom somewhere and she knows a little bit about WordPress to update the blog. You run it this way, but maybe you control the DNS settings from like GoDaddy or Bluehost or whatever, and then you just point all the traffic for your site, to an IP address here on your server. So I mean, you really could hit the ground running with this machine. They do make PBX templates for these, but it gets a little dicey. But there are some services similar to this on the internet already. I think Synaptis Global. I don't know what their infrastructure looks like, but it has the feel of Proxmox VE. If you ever take a look at their site, it looks very much like that. So we got our CRN up. I'm going to show you this thing here, and then let's see, what is the IP address of our CRN? Okay, that. Just trying to answer some questions about what you do with something like this. I mean, it's a very robust platform, and if you have a nice server or a halfway decent old computer you used to use, or a gaming machine or something like that, you can basically build your own setup and be ready to go. And this is ready to start lead generating and adding your campaigns, and you can just download these templates. It takes about 10 minutes, and you're ready to, ready to hit the ground running, make some money.
One thing I was wondering is there, any form of self-service interface, or is there a way to, I notice you're using, a full administrator account, is there a way to set up permissions so people can maybe
Sure.
set up VMs just on some machines?
Well, that I haven't, as far as the provisioning side, I'm not sure. That part, normally I'd only have one administrator setting the provision, your master administrator would probably oversee some of that. But you can build accounts, I believe, in the inside of here. Let me check it for you. But I'm sure you can do it. You just have to go in and look at the support files. Normally I'm the one building them, so no one else touches the machine. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking, since it's template based, the whole idea of self-service seems to sync well with that.
yeah, having someone else provision VMs for it. I mean, by the time that you go through trying to set up, not unless you really knew what you were doing, you're better off just buying like Parallels Virtuoso, and it has the CPAN. I mean, everything is just full blown, ready to go, and you just pull out your checkbook, and you can just get it done. Or call Red Hat, or whoever you want to do your virtualization. Call Solaris, or what is Solaris or Sun, or whatever it is, Oracle. They're all the same to me at the end of the day. I'm not an Oracle person, but I am today. I'm using VirtualBox. So yeah, let's go into our CRM. But yeah, this is pretty simple. I mean, you just keep pulling templates down, or keep building your own templates. And here's an ISO. You can actually upload your own ISO images if you wanted to, if you already had them. Or what we do, or what I do, is I just rsync them up to the directory inside the Proxmox server.
But that's only going to work if you're doing a KVM build.
Oh, the ISO?
Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah, I've only built the ISO. I've only used the ISOs for the KVM. I've never tried an ISO on the container, but I'm assuming that's probably the case, because the ISO, or using the KVM side, it allows you to run Windows and all these things that you normally would not be able to do. And I think I've seen somewhere where somebody was able to do, I think, what was it? FreeBSD or one of those, and I was trying to figure out exactly how he must, I don't know, because the file system is completely different. I don't know how he did. I mean, I just have to go back and check it out. I mean, I just want to know how they did it, because I haven't had time to catch up on the reading. But pretty much everything you need just to get, hit the ground running, keep it simple. I think like with the tux.org, I think this would be a kind of a cool way to kind of get people. Sometimes, people want to help out, but they don't want to, they want to be boss, but they don't want to swing the hammer or whatever. So you see that a lot, and I've always tried to pride myself on just get it done and put your head down, and it all works out. Now I think something like this, just for everyone has an old computer at home just about, and they either give them away or they throw them away, or they sit on the shelf. As long as the power supply is not too resource heavy, you could build a couple of these templates and then front face the servers up, and you can just start building like kind of a outside data center all in different spots. That's where I kind of like want to see this technology in the future. If it's easy enough that we can all use it, we can basically all have these servers sitting out on the front side of the internet where we can all kind of peer them together, or however you want to do it, and you basically become one super node on the web. Switching files. I mean, it sounds a little crazy, but I think in the future, the data centers, not unless they're all like energy efficient, you're going to start seeing smaller footprints, maybe at a local central office, or at a hotel or something like that, because it's only a matter of time before maybe if the laws or legislation were to change, they would actually implement the toll road feature on the internet. So, and that's a whole other discussion, but it's nice to think that if you can get outside the ISP, or you go back to a couple talks when they were talking about Byzantine, and you're building these mesh networks outside the ISP, you know, it's kind of a cool thought, because you're not really dependent on that when you have this mesh network. And I think in the future, where hackers and black market and all that stuff, technologies where people are working outside of ISP is going to be interesting. It's going to open up a lot of new doors for a lot of cool technologies in general, unfortunately. Any other questions you guys have about the templates or anything? Like, you can just go and download them. Does the system seem hard to you? I mean, I've been playing with it for a year, and I don't want to be contaminated and say, yeah, this is easy. Anybody can do this. You want me to show you what the ISO looks like? Would you like me to show you the 2.1 version of this? Is completely different interface and has some different things, but I haven't had a chance to go through it all yet, so that's why I didn't demo it to you.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the 1.9 version is 341 megabytes, and this one's 367 megabytes. So I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna do this the way Dave does it. I'm just gonna kill these machines off. Just kill them, who cares, right? I'm gonna kill the box and rebuild it anyways. I have to put Windows 7 on, unfortunately. So we'll go here, and I think you had a question a while back about VirtualBox and network settings. Is that correct? I think when we did the thing in over at Red Hat in December or January, did you ever figure that out?
Oh yeah, actually.
You figured it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bridge.
Okay. Because it can get a little dicey sometimes. Does anybody not know how to set up a server and front face it to the internet? Do you want me to show you how to do the port forwarding in the router and set up SSH? Just some basic stuff. Protocol 2. Okay, everyone knows. Okay, great.
No, not everybody knows, but I don't know what I want.
You can just do key bases. Just read up on it. The key base one is the better approach. I'm gonna go Debian 64.
You mentioned at the beginning of the talk that you were thinking about doing this at home to replace something like FreeNAS.
Well, no, I want to add that as the storage side into this. Let's see if I can do. You know, I'm playing with it all. I'm just seeing what the limits are. I mean, obviously, the setup I'm showing you today is not really the way you're supposed to do it. But in order for me to be able to plug this video cable and give you a feed, it kind of gives you an idea. And I'm glad Greg was actually able to clarify that you actually are supposed to. Those virtual box machines are actually supposed to be physical servers. So let's see, let's do 10 gigs here.
But the thrust of doing something like this is more towards building virtualization that you're going to let see from outside, right?
Or anything, because a lot of people run servers and mail servers at home, and instead of just having one, heavy machine, what if it gets infected and it just blows the whole box up? You do it on one container, who cares? Just push the button and just start another one. You don't even have to worry about it. That's what's nice. Now, in the newer versions, it has all those failover features. Some of the more advanced, that's a completely different topic outside of this one, because that's like stuff where you get into the more high-end features, failover, fencing, and stuff like that these guys here are going to be more experts at than I am. It's a really nice competition to VMware, considering this is free and VMware is like through the roof. I mean, VMware is very nice. ESX or whatever it is, I haven't used it in a while, but for free, this is even better. So did you get that Cat 5 set up, Mark, at the house?
No.
Well, I have to come down there and pull that cable and run that toner? All right, well, let me know. Stuff's in my truck.
Why would someone want an internal mail or WordPress, mail server or WordPress?
Well, it's kind of like back when I did that PBX talk. Well, Anthony Weiner, if you would have called me, he still have his job. and all these other guys. And actually, it's kind of funny. He's I was at this gathering, I think it was a couple months ago, and there were like all these these Secret Service agents there, and I knew a bunch of them. And I know the guy that resigned. And actually, in his defense, he's a really nice guy, and his wife is 100 times prettier than Senator Payne. And I'm serious, in a nice way. I don't want to say anything that I'll regret and break because I'm on TV or whatever. But you know, I think that sometimes we say things and do things, or we're just joking about it. It's not meant to be taken out of context, like, you know, hey, I was checking around. But you know, that's why I specifically told him and all the other ones, I said, for what you guys do for a living, I wouldn't put anything on the internet. And it's true, you know, when you live in those kind of environments, you don't put anything on the internet, anything. And because you have to be careful that it comes back and gets you, especially when you know, software that you deal with companies like, obviously like Palantir, they have big data and big data resources. I mean, it's like a premier data mining platform with a GIS platform. They can find anything, so don't think you can hide from them or the man or with me. they get everything.
All right, well, I'm not trying to be flippant, I'm just
Yeah.
But why do I want to set up an email server at home so I can send an email to my wife instead of walking upstairs and asking?
Well, I think it gives you privacy. The server that I'm going to put in, it mainly is privacy, and I don't know, prestige or whatever, you want just the gratification. I'm going to actually set up the Mac, the actual Mac server, because I have iPhones, and she has iPhones, and I have an iPad, and we just want everything to be kind of like on our own stuff. So if you want to subpoena my email, I'll give you a blank card for a new hard drive. Here you go. I'll just pull it right from the server and give it to you. But it's things like that, just more privacy, more layering.
But you're still going to be able to get that from outside.
Oh yeah, you would open it all up. I mean, the Mac server for $50 is the best deal out there. I mean, basically, it's all the big Linux packages just wrapped into a nice fancy GUI. You can add the permissions just by pushing the button. I mean, it's awesome. I had a chance to play with it, but I haven't had a chance to configure it and set up the firewall yet for it. So I'm going to add this disk. I'm going to go ahead and launch this 2.1. And it's actually a lot prettier inside. It's not as ugly as the older one. But the old one was stable. That's why I showed it to you. Same process to install. Yeah, but I think privacy is going to be a big issue. It already is, but it's going to be a big issue in the future. And I think if you run your own servers to some level, if you can do it at a decent cost without eating all the energy in the neighborhood, I think that it's a good thing to run your own server, because then you don't eat up everyone else's bandwidth, and you know, you're being more conscientious about the environment.
So speaking of privacy, when you set up this local virtualization area on your test box, when you put that on your network, everybody can see that. How do you keep everybody from seeing that?
Well, I mean,
on the Southeast Linux Fest, I'm going, and I'm going to do that Drupal for a day thing, and you're supposed to build a Drupal environment before you go.
mm-hmm.
But when I get on the network with all the rest of those people, aren't they going to be able to log to my box?
Well, you could there's a couple ways of doing it. You could obviously, well, if it's internal, you're not really going to have if it's like your own box, you haven't opened it up to the firewall yet. The only thing they're going to be able to get to is the NIC cards host. They're going to see the host machine. They may not see the actual Proxmox machine, not unless you open it up to the network. And normally you would do that in a firewall, but it's a couple ways of doing it. But I think I see what you're asking. I think the best way for you to do the Drupal Fest thing is just to run the Drupal local host or on the box itself, or just do it in VirtualBox and just download the template probably somewhere on the internet, and then you can just go from there.
Basically, you want to set the firewall and not let anybody in.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing. And then if you want to let them in, only open up that port. And then the other thing is, I'd be running SE Linux enforcing, just to make sure that if they did get in somehow, that they're going to be trapped by that service and not be able to do anything else. Layers of security.
Yeah. We'll set up a local host now, but they can still type my IP address colon in that port.
Well,
Not if you have a firewall and you're not opening up port 80 then
Yeah.
for that port, then they can't get to it. They won't be able to get to it because the firewall will drop it. So just make sure your firewall's on, you're running a new one. You can do usually from command line service, space IP tables, space status.
There's no real difference between virtualization and physical machines from a network security perspective, right? You still
Actually,
need to.
let me interrupt you and say there's a big difference. Because, well, no. So the big difference is for physical security, you're implying a one-to-one relationship. If you have access to the network of a hypervisor, then you're in a much more advantageous position. Like from a conceptual standpoint,
But he's talking about someone logging onto the same network, seeing the virtual machine from the outside. That's the same picture.
Right.
From on the box as a user, then yes, that's a different story. But from the outside perspective, it's just normal network security.
The one thing I would exactly in that I agree in that regard. It's a real host, same network security requirements. The only thing I would say is pay more attention if you're running virtual machines, because you don't want, if you have 100 servers running, you want to pay more attention to your network security.
If your host gets compromised, theoretically, all your virtual machines are compromised.
Yep.
So,
Right.
yes,
So-
you have to pay more attention at that level.
Right. Think about like Amazon EC2. If you could get a hold of the network that their guests are running, or whatever, any shared network resources or shared storage or whatever, then you have access to a lot of really cool things. People, Bitcoins were taken from, I have a machine on Linode, that's my cloud provider. And they were just compromised recently through their management interface, apparently, and someone had like $20,000 of Bitcoins taken from them. So,
They hosted the Bitcoin. They lost almost 500,000, I think, back in March because Linode went down for their security went down for a hot second.
Just set up the virtual box and then run
Well,
a
it's
Debian
200,000,
flavor,
but it was a chunk of
like
change.
Ubuntu, and then run a Red Hat flavor like SunTOS or Scientific Linux or whatever, and then set up your firewall just like Greg said, and then that way you'll be good to go.
And that's something, ask on the list, there are people who be willing to help there. And if you have, and we can talk about how bad the Magic Google is and the rest, but if you do have a Google account, then you can go to Hangout, share your desktop if you install the plugin, and then people can look. I've started to use that to help debug people remotely. My son's used it to edit videos, to show clips to people and have them comment on it and do editing and whatnot. So it's a relatively powerful tool that people are starting to use. They just added Google Air, so you can now broadcast your stuff via Ustream and YouTube. You don't have to. Remember we talked last month about setting up servers? It's all now built into Google. The bastards took away my business. And that's on recording. I'm talking to you, Google.
There's never egg time around when you need one.
Exactly.
Great.
Now the other thing we're going to need to figure out next time is my image is backwards for the webcam. So I don't know, and I can't find a setting to tell it. It's a mirror image. So it can't read the screen, basically. You're going to have to hold it up to a mirror and stand on your head.
You get a special prism and hold it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can fix that in
Point it towards
post-processing
the back of the
easily.
Huh?
Fix that in post-processing with like an encoder and just say.
Right, but so I'm talking about for the stream. So the camera's going to work fine, but I'm streaming it, and the stream is reversed. On this camera, I don't know how it works on the built-in.
Is the resolution high enough so you can actually see the text?
It's
That's
it's
my
okay.
camera.
It's okay. I mean, if you logged in now, you'd be able to see it on your laptop and see what it looks
Plus-
like. I'm back again. I'm on the Hangout. I'm broadcasting Hangout again because I got an email. Someone said, "Hey, guess I missed the Hangout," so I started again.
So
And
this
I
is
was
what the
looking around.
2.1 looks like. Kind of nicer interface. It has a lot of cool features. It does have a high availability tab when you get it all set up on a big fancy box where you have superpower. And then you create your VMs here, which would be your KVM stuff, or your CT containers, which are right here.
So here,
KVM, there it is.
here's a version or a question for you, Dave. Over, is this sort of like?
So try not to bore everyone to tears. Overt is now the upstream project for Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. So essentially, Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization is a stack like Proxmox that manages your storage for you, manages your hypervisors, manages your guests. So Overt is that upstream where all the new cool features work.
Similar type, I mean, so this is giving me that functionality that I'd be able to get from Overt, with the exception of right now, this has the hooks to do OpenVZ, while Overt, to the best of my knowledge, does not have the OpenVZ hooks.
Correct.
Is that a correct analogy?
My understanding is Overt and Rev are currently tied to KVM, Where a project like LibVirt, which also aims to do similar stuff but is not as comprehensive as Proxmox, is hypervisor agnostic.
But LibVirt also doesn't have this GUI built. It doesn't have a GUI for it.
Correct. This
So-
GUI is not present for for LibVirt. Sorry. Proxmox might use LibVirt on.
I was going to say, this may be using LibVirt,
It's
for all
possible.
we know.
Come over and take a test drive of it, come on.
If you do a dpackage-l, you can tell really easy. If you go to like the master or slave node dpackage-l grep LibVirt, that'll tell you. Because LibVirt does exist for Debian and Debian derivatives.
What'd you say, D-package?
dpkg space dash l.
DKG space
Dash L.
dash L,
Pike.
Pike.
Grep
Grep.
LibVirt, LIDVIRT. So no, looks like it's not
Interesting.
its own thing.
But would it need to be, so he's on one of the guests. Would it be at the guest level or would it be at the host level?
It'd be host level.
Yeah, this is host level, actually.
But what if you SSH
Oh, you're-
into the Proxmox master?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, that's what I'm.
That's a master?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I noticed is that when you were showing the live migration, I saw some services that, we're talking about, they were service names I didn't recognize, but something like Mirror Sync and other
Tunnel,
things.
yeah.
So that's presumably that infrastructure that Proxmox is using, which is not LibVirt based.
So pretty cool stuff, pretty easy to set up, guys, or what? You think? No? Too hard to set up? I mean, I'm just an end user, so I don't know anything. I woke up this morning and I was like, wow, I'm never to Novalug. I'm trying to do this without embarrassing myself. So hopefully I didn't torture anybody. I just, my approach is always try to keep it simple and fun and, something that we can all use. And then we can share and we can build, and 3 months later, how's the Proxmox or how's the Zabbix going? And we just kind of just keep picking and pulling and pushing images back to each other. That way we can kind of keep scaling up. That way we're kind of like in this pseudo-ubiquitous environment, I guess. One of those fancy Cisco words or something like that they always like to use. You have a question, I think, right? No? No questions back there?
Cool.